Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football Network, where today we are not talking about any football. We are talking basketball today, talking about March Madness, talking about the tournament, where Iowa State is a 2 seed in the Midwest region. We're going to go through the whole bracket, kind of look at all that, especially, but obviously take a close look at Iowa State's path through the tournament as well. Apologize. I currently organizing my entire group, the entire CF After Dark crew, into a giant group text working on merch. And it is like herding wet cats that have spent an entire week trapped inside a shed of just catnip. And it is pure insanity. So, anyways, let's get started here in just a second. The other part of it too is kind of an update is currently I am on the hunt for a co-host, I think. So if you or anybody you think might be interested in being a co-host on this show every week, you can shoot me a DM in the Discord, on Twitter, or whatever else, or shoot me an email, whatever. And if you're interested in trying out for it or just kind of learning more about it. So without any further to do, let's take a look at the bracket. We're going to start with Iowa State's first round matchup, which is against Tennessee State, the 15 seed that is coming out of the Ohio Valley as the Whoops. Okay, so coming out of the Ohio Valley as the conference champion, and we are going to look at the profile here on Ken Palm. Ken Palm currently has this picked out as, I believe, like a 20-point win for Iowa State. 24-point win for Iowa State currently projected. I mean, it's a 2 and a 15, which Iowa State has fallen apart in that situation before. But that is, that was a long time ago when, that was well before the NIL era and all this, where talent has just kind of generally floated to the top from the mid majors, where, anymore, if there is a mid major player that scores 15 a game in a reasonably efficient manner, they're probably gone. Like they're probably going up to a high major program or, something, or a higher mid major, or from a low major to a mid major. Just because that's just how it works. And fortunately, Iowa State is on the receiving end of that. You really don't see anybody leaving Iowa State because it's one of the more premier programs in college basketball right now. And unfortunately, Tennessee State is down there in the mid to low major territory. So, but I mean, it's a solid basketball team that's got some players. This Aaron Nkrumah, he's a nice player. He really is. 6'6" wing, shoots pretty well, and he's shooting 34% from three, which isn't like a scorching hot rate, but it's a pretty decent rate at his clip. Travis Harper out there as well at about 42% on 185 attempts, which is a good percentage at a good rate. That's a legit 3-point shooter there. In the end, though, I mean, if you look at, like you say, if you look at these comparisons, Tennessee State doesn't do anything super well on offense, other than that they are a good free throw shooting team at over 76% as a team. The offense, they do an okay job on the offensive glass. But other than that, are not great at much of anything on offense. 173rd on Ken Palm. Contrast with, obviously, we are all well acquainted with Iowa State's defense and how good that defense can be at turning people over, at forcing turnovers in the post, about picking off passes around the perimeter, contesting shots. When it's at its best, Iowa State is one of the absolute best defensive teams in the country and will give Tennessee State a lot of problems. Meanwhile, you go to the other side of this. Iowa State is they had a lull there in February where their offense wasn't great, but the last 5 games they've been really, really, really good. So their 21st Ken Palm rated offense right now is a little deceiving based on how they've been playing recently. That's more so reflective of kind of the late January into mid February lull that they went through. Um, you know, Obviously, best shooter in college basketball, Milan Momcilovic, Joshua Jefferson, all that. Tennessee State again doesn't do a lot much on defense. They are opportunistic in that they'll pick off passes if you give it to them, but otherwise they don't do anything particularly well on defense. Like I said, Ken Palm's a 24 point as I would say as a 24-point favorite. There's not a lot I'm looking at in here as far as like actual danger zone. Maybe maybe if they come out super, super lazy and Travis Harper gets running and starts knocking down threes, maybe makes it a little bit of a game for a while, but there's just something major, major, major would have to go wrong for this to be much of a contest. So, um, I think you're fairly safe picking. I think you're fairly safe picking Iowa State is probably as a double digit winner there. Um, Next thing I want to do though is I want to pull up my bracket here. We've got a blank bracket started. Oh, and it's apparently just decided to unshare itself. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Hold on. Ha ha. There we go. Okay. So let's go down to our Midwest region down here. Obviously, Michigan down there at the 1 seed, Georgia and St. Louis at the 8-9 game, Texas Tech and Akron at the 5-12 game, Alabama Hofstra at the 4-13, Tennessee, and then the play-in winner at the 6-11, Virginia and Wright State 3-14, Kentucky Santa Clara at the 7-10, and then down here where I think we're pretty good, feeling like we're taking Iowa State there. I would say the second round game there, Kentucky Santa Clara is a very, very interesting matchup. Kentucky is long and athletic. They don't necessarily shoot the cover off the ball, but they can run up and down the floor. They've got length. If you think of it as you can think of it a little bit like some of those older Calipari teams that had like Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd Gilchrist, where they're just long and athletic. This team is not that. I mean, this team is not nearly as skilled as that team was. But in terms of just athleticism and length, they're probably in that neighborhood. They do have a couple nice shooters. Um, Santa Clara, though, is a really, really interesting team because um, they're a little bit interesting for a West Coast team specifically. Now, mid majors that are this high rated, you do kind of expect them to be able to shoot the ball, all that. But Santa Clara is actually also one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. They come in at 19th in offensive rebounding percentage. Um, they actually have this as a 2-point Kentucky win. So borderline just a toss up. Santa Clara shoots the ball really well. They're at 35% from three. They're a good free throw shooting team at 74%. They don't turn the ball over a lot. The only thing they really don't do very well. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Redbird, as well, Chris. The only thing they actually are really bad at, interestingly enough, Santa Clara is 359th in the country in getting to the line. Santa Clara, because they're a bit of a jump shooting team, does not go to the line. So even though they are a 74% free throw shooting team, they don't get there very often. They only take 25. They only take 25. So it's 25 points. It's free throws attempted per field goal attempted. And they're way down there. They just do not get to the line. And you look at Kentucky, though, they get to the line. They shoot 72.8% as a team, which is fine. Kentucky's defense is okay. Not okay. It's a good defense. They're 27th in the country compared to Santa Clara's 23rd. But like I said, really the main deal here with Kentucky is length, athleticism. And so it's really two contrasting styles between Kentucky and Santa Clara. I I think I would say you should be able to beat either of them. Um, you could you could make an argument either way about how you feel about the matchup because Kentucky is long and athletic, but they don't shoot the ball super well. They're 34% on three, 34% from three. That's almost entirely buoyed by Colin Chandler, who's shooting 42.7% on 164 attempts. They've got Denzel Aberdeen's at 35%, but Atego Owe is only at 33% or just shy of 34%. They have one shooter basically. And otherwise they're just long. They can rebound a little bit. Uh, but they just if they are not able to athletically, if they're not able to overpower a team athletically in terms of size and length, if they're not able to do that, they just don't have a great backup plan. Like they can't shoot their way out of it. Like if the paint's getting clogged and they can't attack the rim, they're in a little bit of weird shape, and they don't have a great backup team. Yeah, exactly. They're a weird team. They've got one of the most expensive rosters, and they're super inconsistent. That's because they're really young and they don't have a lot of great scorers on their team. They're only 39th in offense, but they're going up against Santa Clara's 82nd defense. Uh, Santa Clara will turn people over a little bit. They're 22nd in turnover percentage, but otherwise are below average at offensive rebounding, at field goal percentage against. They're just not really they're a very mediocre or worse defensive team, and Kentucky's offense isn't great. the so in if you, There's kind of the narrative that Iowa State struggles against long and athletic teams, and I think that is maybe true to a certain extent. But you got to think about the long and athletic teams they've played, though. Um, Arizona, obviously, Arizona's really good. They've just played Arizona close, but they're really good. They're really long, athletic. They have one or two shooters. Um, and then you look at maybe Houston, if you want to call them long and athletic. They beat Houston. Kansas is long and athletic, and they whopped them at home. Um, you know, Outside of the point guard position, Purdue is long. You could argue about their athleticism, but they're tall. And so the only thing that scares me about Kentucky is they're going to have an insane crowd. They are. St. Louis is really close to Lexington, so they'll have a borderline home crowd there. I'm really not that worried about it. Um, just because, like I said, they're really inconsistent, and if they don't get some above, if they don't get some above average shooting, I think Iowa State's defense is really going to eat them alive. I just don't see them having a lot of great success, um, consistently against Iowa State's defense. On the other hand, you have Santa Clara, who is a very good offensive rebounding team, and they're a pretty good 3-point shooting team. And they've got multiple shooters that can knock them down. So we've got Christian Hammond, who's knocking them down at 40%. Alan Graves knocking him down at 41%. You've got Elijah Mahi at 30 at just at about 34%. You got another 36%er in Sash Gavaliagov. I think I did that pretty well. And another guy that shoots at about 40%. So they've got lots of shooters on the outside. They swing the ball around really well. Santa Clara, I think, would have a lot of trouble stopping Iowa State when they're on defense and Iowa State's on offense. I think they'd have a lot of trouble stopping Iowa State. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't see all those 3-point shooters and in a pretty good assist rate, and kind of hope we don't play them because when Iowa State's playing really well, they can be suffocating and it's not a big deal. But if for whatever reason they are a little bit slow in rotations, whatever it is, Santa Clara has the shooters to punish them. And that's how you beat, Iowa State's no middle defense is you keep the ball swinging around, make them keep rotating. You make a double team come out and then you pass out of that double team and find an open shooter because just because of the double team, there's going to be an open shooter. And Santa Clara can put a number of them on the floor at any one point in time. And if they get hot, that's not great. So like I said, maybe because Santa Clara's defense isn't anything special, they don't have massive size or anything. Um they've got one guy. They have one guy that is 7'1", so he's pretty good size. They've got a 6'9", a 6'8", but otherwise everyone else is a little bit shorter. They're not a massive team. Um, it's just they probably can't stop Iowa State long enough when Iowa State's on offense, unless Iowa State is just cold from the field as far as a jump shooting team. But I just the idea of Santa Clara's shooters getting hot and them causing a lot of problems for the defensive rotations has me a little bit worried. And I think just saying Kentucky's long and athletic, I don't think is enough. Um, I don't think that's a deep enough analysis as to as to what Iowa State does, because Iowa State's defensive scheme is I mean, obviously it's hectic. You have to have smart passers, which Santa Clara does have smart passers. Kentucky, they're not as seasoned. They're inconsistent. I could absolutely see Iowa State's pressure really causing a lot of problems for Kentucky. Um, Granted, their coach is Mark Pope, who when he was at BYU and he had lots of shooters, gave Iowa State tons and tons of fits. He does not have that roster at Kentucky. He can't just say we're going to keep swinging around and just try to shoot the lights out. That's just not, that's not really a viable plan at Kentucky. So Kentucky's going to have to, they're going to have to attack the basket. And recently, Iowa State's done a pretty decent job defending that and getting turnovers in the lane, picking off swing passes, things like that. So, I mean, I would think Iowa State can and in most cases would beat either team. But to me, the Santa Clara one, that matchup feels. I think that one makes me more nervous, just because of how many shooters they've got, and then we've seen in the past, like with Texas Tech, and TCU to a certain extent, that if the defense is a little bit sluggish that day or whatever it is, that if rotations are a little bit slow, sometimes shooters are left open, and Santa Clara can take advantage of that in a way that Kentucky just can't. So I'm not going to say I'd rather play Kentucky. I don't know. I don't necessarily know if I have a preference on which one I'd want to play. Just because I think there's ups and downs. Kentucky's just a better overall team, probably than Santa Clara, I think. But Santa Clara is notably worse on defense than Kentucky is, and probably not a great fit as far as defending Iowa State. So for that reason, I guess you maybe you go Santa Clara just because you feel like even if their shooters are hot, Iowa State should be able to score fairly consistently against them. But I think Santa Clara is going to win that game. I don't trust Kentucky right now, and it's certainly possible that Santa Clara shows up and just gets blown out because you know, they've only played a handful of good teams this year. They've played some close. They play Gonzaga and all this, Gonzaga and St. Mary's and all that. But outside of those two, the West Coast Conference isn't anything to write home about. But I think Santa Clara wins that one. Virginia will win that. Tennessee will win that playing game. Alabama Hofstra is a really, really interesting one. I mean, obviously they played two completely different schedules, but Hofstra can score and they can rip it. They shoot pretty well from three. Got a couple really, really nice players. Alabama has basically no post game and they don't really like to defend very much. I'm going to take Alabama, but if you're looking for a top four seed to go down in the first round, Alabama might be your ticket there. Akron's a weird game for Texas Tech because Akron can score it as well. They're 88 points a game. But with Christian Anderson healthy, I think Texas Tech is going to win that one. Yeah, Alabama is also down a player as well. So that's absolutely worth noting there, that it's possible that Hofstra takes that. Georgia to St. Louis can be either one. Robbie Avila is great. Georgia's got some good post talent. I'm going to take Georgia there. I don't love the matchup there for St. Louis. We'll take Michigan there. Michigan just does not. Michigan has just too many horses for Georgia. That's just not going to happen. This is an interesting one. Um, Both teams are going to just shoot it a bunch. They're going to take a ton of threes. That game could easily make it into the 90s for both teams without a doubt. Um, Texas Tech being down JT Toppin isn't great. They got Iowa State in Hilton, kind of on a dead cat bounce. They were still kind of on their dead cat bounce after the JT Toppin injury, but after that, we've seen them start to slide a little bit. If Christian Anderson's healthy, he can keep them in a lot of games, and they've got a few shooters in there too as well. But you know, I think if Alabama can get past see, it's just like I said, though, Alabama just does not like to defend the basketball. Um, and it's strange. So I'm going to take Texas Tech here to go to the Sweet 16. Tennessee, Virginia is a really interesting one. Tennessee doesn't score the ball particularly well, and Virginia doesn't really. They're both defensive teams. What's worth noting is Tennessee right now is ranks as the number one offensive rebounding team in college basketball. So that's interesting. If you play Tennessee, if I would say plays Tennessee, that is marginally concerning. Um, but I think Virginia probably wins this one. If we go, let's go take a look at Virginia's pro stat profile here. Um, Let me pull this back up. That's Santa Clara. We'll go back to them here in a second when we talk about them potentially playing Iowa State. Let's see here. I want to look at Virginia. Where are we at? Where's Virginia? Did I miss them? Where did I miss them? What's going on here? Virginia. There we go. Virginia shoots it pretty well. They're 27th offense, 16th defense. So they're just outside of that kind of top 3 seed, final 4-ish team. They do everything pretty well. They're just kind of an unremarkable team, I guess. They're a good offensive rebounding team, just like Tennessee. So that's an interesting nugget to that game, is that both teams can really rebound the hell out of the ball. Virginia's got a little bit better shooters. If you're gonna, I think Virginia just has a better shot at this. They've got 43% shooter here, 41% shooter there. Whoopsies. But even the rest of their starters are at 34, 34, 35%. They got people that they can swing the ball around to. I think I'm gonna take Virginia in that game. But I wouldn't be shocked if Tennessee pulls that one out. They're just right now they're in a really bad offensive slump. Oh, that's not the one. I want this one. They're in a really bad offensive slump right now, and I don't see them breaking out of it on a neutral court against a good defensive team like Virginia. I mean, it's possible maybe they hit their stride against Miami, Ohio, but I don't know. Tennessee, they just can't shoot their way out of much. It's just I don't know. Tennessee feels too much like they don't have enough going on offensively, that if they can't just rebound the shit out of it, and if they can't just out rebound the other team and just get second chance points, that they're just not going to have a shot at this. So I'm going to say Virginia. So Santa Clara, like I said, is an interesting matchup for Iowa State, because I really think Iowa State they'll be able to score on Santa Clara. I don't think they have a great answer for like Joshua Jefferson, but if Iowa State's defense is not up to par, Santa Clara can shoot the hell out of the ball, and that is concerning. Just as it is with playing any mid-major that can shoot, is like if they get hot, then you got to have your game together. And Iowa State is not a good free throw shooting team, and if you come down to the wire and they're trading threes for free throws, and Iowa State's only making 1 out of 2, or maybe go 0-2 one time, then all of a sudden trading threes for free throws is a pretty effective strategy on making a comeback late. And I'm not trying to scare everybody, because I really think that in a game with Iowa State and Santa Clara, most of the time I don't think it would come down to that, because I think Iowa State would be able to have a double-digit ish lead for a lot of that game, as long as they're knocking down shots at a reasonable rate and they're not turning the ball over too much. Um, but it's one where I just feel like the opportunity for someone out of this game to jump up and bite Iowa State. I think Santa Clara is the one I would pick to do it. I just don't love Kentucky's lack of a backup plan if they're not successful attacking the rim. So taking the Cyclones there. Up here, I think this is where Texas Tech's run ends a little bit, just because I think they've got too much down low for Texas Tech to deal with. Um, Michigan's guards aren't great, and Christian Anderson is, but you know, I I just think right here's where you run out of magic a little bit there for the Red Raiders, and where your lack of your lack of post depth really becomes a major issue, because they just don't have the guys that can bang down low, um, with Michigan. So it's kind of a I don't know. Yeah, I think I really like Yaxel Langdor. It's funny because there's in their key players JT Toppin, but he's out. So that's an unfortunate pull there by CBS. But uh, right now, without JT Toppin in there, Texas Tech has no answer for Yaxel Lendeborg. So I this is I think where Texas Tech starts falling apart, and I think just Michigan's got just too much for them. So now you get to Virginia, Iowa State. This is an interesting matchup here. Rematch of the was it 2016 game, or George Niang's last game. I believe is also Malcolm Brogdon's last game for Virginia. A lot of things point in the direction of Iowa State here, especially if they're playing well. Which at this point, if you've beaten Tennessee State and Santa Clara up through this point, you're probably playing for fairly well, because both especially Santa Clara is a pretty solid team. Virginia is just they're okay off, they're decent offensively, but nothing that Iowa State can't handle. Um, they've got some shooters, but they're not a big like swing the ball, like making the ball fly around the perimeter and giving Iowa State lots of problems. They're not, you know, they're still a fairly slow offense. They're not trying to run in transition or anything like that. And if you're trying to grind it out in the half court against Iowa State's defense, you've got to be sharp. You've got to knock down jump shots, and that's a big test for Virginia, who, I'm not sure is going to be able to do that for um, for long stretches of times. They are one of the slowest teams in college basketball at 354th in pace. I mean, defense, they do a good job. They're second in block percentage. They protect the rim fairly well. They contest shots pretty well, as far as like allowed field goal percentage, but offense, they're very mediocre. Outside of their 10th overall, their 10th rated offensive rebounding, they're in the 50s, 60s or worse on everything else offensively. They take forever on offense. They take forever on defense. Um, if they're going to sit there and just try to grind out half court possessions against Iowa State's defense, I think that's a bad plan. Unless you've got a ton of shooters and you can really swing the ball around, I think that's a bad plan against Iowa State's defense. So I think Iowa State is going to have a matchup and a scheme advantage there too, because part of it too with any of these teams in the tournament, unless they were to face a Big 12 team, is that it's basically impossible to simulate Iowa State's defense in practice. So you can't know what the pressure feels like, what the double teams, what the traps and all that feels like until you're in the game. And I think Santa Clara, Virginia would have a difficult time dealing with that um, on short notice. So then you get to Michigan, Iowa State in the Elite Eight. And I believe this is a fairly popular pick for Iowa State to go through here. Well, maybe not. At least not for CBS. A lot of the experts I've seen, like a lot of them, experts have been picking Iowa State to this game and then picking them over Michigan. Michigan is kind of almost a little bit more. I wouldn't say a more extreme. They're almost kind of an Arizona. They're very similar to Arizona. That they're very post heavy. Their guards aren't great. Now Arizona does have a very good guard in Jaden Bradley, and they've got Delorso that can shoot. Michigan's guards aren't awesome. They're okay. They're not awesome though. Michigan really likes to dominate down in the post. That's their thing. They like to score down low, and that's not anything new to Iowa State. Like I said, Arizona loves to do that. Kansas likes to do that. There's a number of teams that Iowa State has played this year that like to just pound it down low and see what can happen. Um, but Michigan doesn't have the same caliber of guards as Arizona does. So, but in the NCAA tournament, a lot of it is guard play, and Iowa State fortunately has one of the best point guards in the country, and Killian Toure is still one of the best defensive point guards in the country, and if he contributes anything on offense, that causes major issues for the other team because they're hoping to just leave him out of the scouting report and not worry about him on offense. But as soon as you can swing it around to him and he can get you some buckets, then we are a way harder to defend because now you have to stay out on him. That leaves extra room for Joshua Jefferson, for Milan, for Tamin Lipsey, for Jamarian Bateman, who you'd like to see Jamarian Bateman have some bigger games coming up through the term as well. He's been, I don't want to say he's been like invisible or he's like disappeared because he has played important minutes and made important plays. We just haven't seen him, we haven't seen him hit double figures in a few games. So it'd be nice to see more from Jamarian Bateman here. But because of the pressure that Iowa State can put on Axel Lendeborg and on Yaxel Lendeborg, I think this is a winnable game for Iowa State. So I'm going to pull up Michigan's Ken Palm here. They are third in Ken Palm to Iowa State's sixth. Obviously, Yaxel Lendeborg. Yeah, I keep saying Langeborg. Yaxel Lendeborg is a very good player. No doubt about it. Let me pull this up here. So, he shoots okay from three. He's a 35% shooter there, 37% here. You got a 40% down here. Not a huge volume, but 40%. Trey McKinney's down there. He shoots about 38%. But, their guards don't score the ball a ton. And they're not really not actually like a massive team. Mara's big. He's 7'3". He's huge. And Langeborg's 6'9". And they got 6'9" here, but you got 6'1", 6'2", 6'4", 6'5", 6'5". I mean, they've got they're not like a massive team. And their guards are just very mediocre. If you can make Lendeborg basically beat you by himself, or if you can get him to turn it over, like his assist rate is okay, but he turns it over. He doesn't turn it over a ton, but his assist rate's not that great. I envision him that if Iowa State can really get him in traps, especially down the post, that's a Twitter account. If Iowa State can get him trapped down the post and force him to react to it, I think they can beat Michigan. I do. I really do. This feels like a game that Iowa State can pull out and make their first Final Four since 1944. So I'm taking the Cyclones to the Final Four. And I realize, I understand that I am biased here, but I really do think there's a path for them here to get to the Final Four. So I'm going to take Iowa State. We're going to go through these other regions as well. I'm not going to go as in depth into this as I am into that region, since these are only Final Four opponents for Iowa State. Duke's going to go there. TCU is an interesting one. The way they can play, they can beat Ohio State, and on the right night they could beat Duke. I'm going to take them there. I'm going to take them to fall apart against Duke, though. This is unfortunate. Northern Iowa is like a fun story here, but St. John's is a horrible matchup for you and I. I think Zuby Ejiofor is going to have a really big game in that one. Kansas is going to win there. This is a weird game. South Florida could beat Louisville. I think Louisville's going to win there, but keep an eye out for that 6-11 game. I think South Florida could definitely be an upset there. Michigan State through there, UCLA through there, UConn through here. Here, this is where St. John's firepower just doesn't work. Because Zuby, Badunga can absolutely handle Zuby Ejiofor down in the post. Kansas has too much for them. Then St. John's doesn't have an answer for Darren Peterson. We'll go down here. Louisville's kind of a fun team, but Michigan State's just kind of better at everything. We'll take Michigan State there. This is going to be my upset here. I'm going to take UCLA here. I think UCLA is kind of a dangerous team. They can score the ball. They can defend a little bit. I'm not a believer in UConn because I'm not a believer in the Big East. I think that conference was bad this year. I mean, I think UConn really should have been a 3, probably not a 4, but you could make an argument. I think a pretty good argument. They should have been a 3 seed just because their resume was just so lackluster. Um, yeah, give me the Bruins through there, but their run ends there with Michigan State moving on and Duke moving on here. And then I'm going to take. I'm just not enough. I'm not 100% sold here on Michigan State, so I'm going to take Duke there. As much as it'd be cool to see the Fins up take down Arizona, well, that ain't happening. Kind of an interesting game here. Utah State's probably a little underseeded. I'm going to take Utah State. The West Coast teams always get underseeded a little bit. I think Utah State's over Villanova here makes a lot of sense. Wisconsin High Point. This is going to be a fun game. High Point is a. Well, I'm not necessarily taking High Point. I'm taking Wisconsin here, but this is a fun game. High Point can really score the ball. He had 90 points a game, and Wisconsin started a little rough, but they're one of the hottest teams in college basketball over the last month and a half. They can really shoot the ball. This game is probably going to go. I would guess both teams into the 90s. They're both, Wisconsin's a very good free throw shooting team, almost 80%. This is gonna be a fun game, but I think Wisconsin will pull that out. Another interesting one, if Arkansas wasn't like the second hottest team in college basketball, I would almost take Hawaii there. And I kind of jokingly took Hawaii on our Sunday bracket reaction on CF After Dark. But Arkansas is just too hot, and I just don't love this matchup for Hawaii. Because Hawaii basically wants you to try to beat them through ISO ball essentially, and that's basically exactly what Arkansas wants to do. So not a great matchup there. BYU is going through here. It doesn't matter. They've got AJ DeBonsa. Gonzaga through here. Miami having to play Missouri in St. Louis sucks. Miami's a better team, but playing in front of Missouri's home crowd is not great. Purdue through here. Purdue through there as well. I think BYU gets Gonzaga here. Gonzaga is a good team. But in the NCAA tournament, having the best player in college basketball can drag you a long ways. And I think this is I think AJ DeBonsa dragging BYU through the tournament will be very reminiscent of Jimmer Fredette dragging BYU through the tournament, where you just have that one-star player that can keep them in games, just keep getting buckets. And I think I would guess we'll see a 40 burger from AJ DeBonsa in one of these two games, maybe against Gonzaga. So BYU through there. Up here, Arizona takes care of Utah State without too much issue. It's a shame that this game has to be in the second round because Wisconsin and Arkansas have been two of the best teams in college basketball for the last month and a half. But I think Wisconsin's shooting puts them through here. BYU and Purdue is a fascinating one here because I'm not big on Purdue. I think I was a little bit surprised that they were able to work their way back up to a 2 seed because they struggled there for a while. I mean, they worked their way up. They won the Big 12. They won the Big 10 tournament, beating Michigan and all that, which is great. But I don't know. Brayton Smith is good, but if you have one guy that can, lock down Brayton Smith, they fall apart pretty quick. Give me BYU here. I think AJ DeBonsa keeps dragging the Cougs through into the Elite Eight. Now, Arizona, Wisconsin has a chance to be an electric game because Arizona's defense, where them being able to pack the paint and really, really protect the rim. Wisconsin kind of doesn't care about that. They want to shoot threes and they can make them. And Arizona basically dares you to be a jump shooting team, and Wisconsin kind of wants to be a jump shooting team. So I think Arizona will win here, but if Arizona is going to lose at any point before the Final Four, Arizona catching Wisconsin right here is probably I think that would be the best, or that would be the most likely spot that Arizona were to get upset, if they're going to get upset. If Wisconsin is making threes, they are a very scary team. That's absolutely right, Redbird. So I'm going to pick Arizona here, but do not be shocked. I know they've got you're only picking Wisconsin 6% here. Do not be shocked if Wisconsin gets hot. They can hang with Arizona. So I'm taking Arizona there, but if that matchup actually happens, I'm not feeling as confident about the Arizona pick here. However, we get to this matchup, Arizona BYU. I'm going to look up their regular season meetings because I believe Arizona kind of took care of BYU both times. Um, let's see. So on BYU, they beat BYU by 3 in Provo, and then they beat them by 7 at home. So actually, it's been 2 close games. At this point, though, I think this is where BYU starts to run out of gas a little bit. And I think Arizona gets them for a third time here. So good run by, I think it's a good run by BYU. And AJ DeBonsa clearly, I think in here he puts up at least 140 burger, maybe two. Um, Cements himself as the number 1 draft pick for the next NBA draft. But Arizona's just got too much. Let's go down here, Florida through here. I think Iowa's probably going to win this. Actually, Clemson's down a couple players there, and they're just kind of an okay team. And Clemson is one of the slowest teams in college basketball, but somehow Iowa is even slower. So Clemson's pace plays perfectly into what Iowa wants to do. So give me Iowa through to that. Vanderbilt McNeese is a fun matchup here. Um, McNeese is a decent defensive team. They can score the ball a little bit. Good team, but usually mid majors, you need them to shoot better than that from 3. So I'm going to take Vanderbilt. Nebraska, tough matchup there. Troy's a fun 13 seed, but Nebraska is going to go through there. I think VCU is going to grab North Carolina here. I do not believe in North Carolina because I do not believe in the ACC. Look at that. Big discrepancy there in shooting threes, big discrepancy in shooting free throws. VCU gets hot, they're going through. Illinois Penn is fun. Illinois can really, really score. Penn is they won the Ivy League. They're an okay team. They shoot the 3 ball well, not as great from the floor, but Illinois just got way too much firepower here. I think it'd be fun for Fran to go through here and make the Sweet 16 through VCU, but Illinois would have to go really cold and Penn would have to get hot. Down here, St. Mary's is going to take care of Texas A&M. I don't think A&M is anything notable particularly, so I'm not too super worried about it. Unfortunate for Idaho because I think they're kind of a fun story, but Houston's going through there. Illinois is going to go through there. I think Nebraska makes their first Sweet 16 ever. They're going to win their first tournament game ever, and then they're going to make their first Sweet 16 ever here. Florida vaporizes Iowa because Iowa has no answer whatsoever for anything that Florida's got going on in the post. That's a 20-point game. Florida takes care of Nebraska here. Nebraska could get hot. Nebraska could theoretically get hot here, but I just don't think they've got the firepower here yet. A&M, I don't think A&M should be in the tournament either. I'm totally on board there. Down here, Illinois, Houston, fun game. I think Houston goes through here. Illinois, like I said, Illinois can really score it, but Houston's defense is just nuts. And Illinois hasn't played any defense anywhere close to that all season. So we're going to take, actually, I'm going to pull it up. I'm going to see if I don't believe, because they've played Michigan, who has a good defense, but playing a good defense is different than playing Houston's defense, with how physical they are. And, the NCAA tournament does call things a little bit tighter. So it's not like, Houston won't be able to get away with like just beating the shit out of people like they do when Iowa State plays them, and like where Iowa State and Houston is just a knife fight. They won't be able to get away with that. But it'll still be a difficult defense for them to deal with. Meanwhile, Illinois just refuses to defend most of the time. They are, I believe, literally last in college basketball at forcing turnovers. 365th. I believe that's last place. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's last place. Yes, indeed, last place in the country in forcing turnovers on defense. They don't foul, but they just don't defend. They don't foul because they're first in the country and not putting people on the line. But that is because they do not bother. They don't do anything with contact. They take no risks. They don't do anything. So with Illinois not being able to turn anybody over, um, Houston's going to get they're going to get plenty of extra chances because they're a good rebounding team, they're a good defending team. They can, Emmanuel Sharp can do things. Kings and Flemings with Illinois refusing to foul, refusing to play physical, refusing to turn them over. Kingston Flemings is probably going to go for a 30 burger in this game. It's just not going to happen. However, I Florida's post is just I think it's just going to be too much here. Houston's a great team. There'll be another Elite Eight. I just don't think they can get through. So give me Florida, Duke, Iowa State, and Arizona here. I think this is tough. I have seen some people take Michigan State over Duke here. And Duke has what's worth noting here is that Duke does have some injury concerns. They've got a number of guys out. Caleb Foster, I believe, is like I don't think he's out. I think he's like questionable for the tournament type of thing. Like maybe misses the first weekend, but maybe be back for the second weekend type thing. So we'll see how healthy he is. Michigan State could go through here. If Michigan State goes through here, Florida's going to win that. If Duke goes through here, yeah, Florida's going to win that. Iowa State, Arizona, the third matchup of the season. This is where it gets tricky, and I got to really work at not applying my Iowa State bias here. But played them really close in the tournament, and both teams played really well. Assuming there are no injuries up to this point, and obviously both teams are playing well enough to get to the Final Four. This is a potential to be just another edition of the best game of the entire college basketball season. This time around, obviously they've got a good game plan for Arizona. And I think that's another game that just kind of comes down to the last minute or two and just figuring out who's got the ball and when. But in college basketball, it's hard to beat a team 3 times. Give me the Cyclones. Now, this is where it gets real tricky because as much as I want to say at this point, Iowa State's riding the vibes. If you're at this point where Iowa State's in the championship game, Milan Momcilovic is probably shooting it well. Josh Jefferson's playing well. Jamarian Bateman's probably chipping in. Killian Torre is still being something on offense. Blake Buchanan's rebounding. Nate Heise is contributing all over the place. You're getting what you want from all these people to get to this spot. Florida's post game concerns me. However, it is not better than Arizona's post game. I mean, Florida's good, no doubt about it. But they're not a great 3-point shooting team. They don't shoot a ton of them. They don't want to be shooting tons of threes. Florida has, let me pull up their Ken Palm page here. Florida has exactly one guy shooting 40% on 169, Urban Klavzar. Otherwise, they have a 33% shooter in Thomas Huff, a 28% in Xavier Lee, and that's kind of it. They don't really have any relevant 3-point shooters outside of Urban Klavzar. They're not like an especially big team, but Alex Condon and Ruben Chinyelu are both very good players, but they don't. But like other than that, Florida isn't a massive. I guess Thomas Hall is 6'9". Their guards are not very big. They don't shoot it very well. If Iowa State plays Arizona and beats them in the Final Four, you're basically just playing another you're just playing another Arizona in the title game. And if you can beat Arizona, who has already played you twice this season, knows how your offense works, knows how your defense works, they've got the scout. Florida doesn't have the scout. I mean, they'll have some scout at this point because you've played a bunch of games and they've been watching them. But playing 2 games against Iowa State is a lot different than watching 2 games of film again of Iowa State. 2 completely different things as far as dealing with pressure and stuff like that. Um, fuck, I might just talk myself into saying some irresponsible shit here. If Iowa State beats Arizona in the Final Four, they're beating Florida. um, yeah, I realize I'm riding some bias here, but there's a there's an easy way to talk yourself into all these. I will tell you that I've said this in our Slack chat this whole week. I think there are only 3 outcomes that happen to Iowa State. There's only 3 outcomes, and one of them will happen. You're either going to lose right here to Santa Clara. You're going to get to the second round. Santa Clara is going to get hot and take you down. If you get through here, you beat Virginia. You could lose right here to Michigan. You find out that their posts are just too much, and that's the end of Iowa State right there. If they get to the Final Four, I think if they are good enough to make it to the Final Four, they're going to win that Final Four game. And then whoever's on the backside of this bracket, I'm not scared of. In my opinion, there are 3 options. Iowa State's either losing here in the second round, they're losing here in the Elite Eight, or they're going to cut down the nets in Indianapolis. In my opinion, those are the 3 out. Those are the 3 things that Iowa State might have happen. I find and losing in any other round, I think feels unlikely based on what would have to happen for them to get there. One, I mean, Tennessee State, I mean, shit would have to really go wrong for this to happen. If you're here, I like the matchup against either for Tennessee or Virginia. And you're playing well enough to get to the Sweet 16. So you're going to beat that team. Michigan's good. If you're playing anybody but Michigan here, you're feeling really good. But I don't think anybody before this is taking Michigan down. Michigan's got a pretty good path. But if you beat Michigan, you're going to the Final Four. You're probably playing Arizona. You're either playing Arizona or you're playing somebody that's not as good as Arizona. So, I mean, if somehow like Wisconsin wins this here and makes it to the Final Four and you have to play Wisconsin, then you're probably nervous because that's a lot of fucking shooters. But if this is Arizona here, if this is Arizona, Iowa State here, I'm taking Iowa State to win that third one. It's hard to beat a team 3 times. And Iowa State nearly got them last time. And that was with Taman Lipsey not playing particularly well until he hit that 1-3. But they didn't shoot for free throws well. They didn't get to the free throw line very much. Jermaine Bateman contributed basically nothing. Nate Heisey didn't contribute a lot. There was a lot of things that Iowa State could have done better in that game to beat Arizona. If they make it to the Final Four, they're winning that game. And if they make it to the title game, Florida is the worst matchup for Iowa State on the other side of that bracket. They're the worst matchup by far. But they're basically just the same team as Arizona, but worse at shooting the 3. So that's it. They're either losing here, or they ain't losing. It's one of those 3. So that's where I'm going to leave you guys off for this week. I hope everybody enjoyed the foray into the world of college basketball. It's an exciting time for Iowa State fans. Exciting time for us, just because this team is playing as well as we've seen an Iowa State team play in a long time. I believe Bart Torvik currently has them over the last 5 games as being the best team in college basketball over the last 5 games. So if Iowa State can make some jump shots and take care of the ball, they can go a long, long ways. So, well, I hope everybody enjoyed this episode of Iowa State Cyclones Live here on the Voice of College Football. If you're watching anywhere besides YouTube, if you're on Facebook or you're on Twitter, definitely check out the YouTube page. Subscribe if you enjoy it. And then we will see you guys all again next week, hopefully talking about Iowa State in the Sweet 16 and maybe a little bit of football. So everybody have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the tournament this weekend. See you later. Go Cyclones.